Good afternoon. Good evening, actually. It's 7 p.m. Eastern Time.
Yes.
You're here on the Smarten Up show with Darryl and Milena Weinberg.
Smarten up, everybody.
Okay, we're done.
Okay. That's all we need to say.
We just needed, a regular weekly reminder for everyone to smarten up.
Wow, it has been quite a week, I'm telling you. You look at what's going on news-wise. You've got weather wars all over the place. You've got a couple of hurricanes now. Again, Florida is getting hit. Fort Myers is being pummeled by Idalia. Second year in a row, because last year Ian absolutely devastated them. And
so that's happening in the weather. It's happening in the political scene.
It's
happening
fires all over the place, and it's a sign of
Yes.
The Bible. Jesus talks about birth pangs that were coming, and that there would be wars and rumors of wars, and there would be floods and famine and things like that. And we're starting to see all that.
Yes.
And in no bigger way is the war on than against our children. And that's why we're here week after week trying to help everybody to understand what the playing field is.
Absolutely. And I think first time this week we were called by a journalist to be parent advocates or parental advocates. We thought we were just providing solutions for education for parents, but we are realizing that there's more to this, and it's somebody who doesn't necessarily share our view that defined really what we do.
the reporter, and I use that term loosely, or journalist rather.
Right, journalist.
Is working for the Toronto Star, which is about as liberal and as progressive as you can possibly imagine.
Which means it's funded by our government.
In Canada, yes, the mainstream media is funded by the Liberal government, and so they are essentially their mouthpieces. But for a long time, even before the Star started to get federal funding, they were useful for paper training your puppies, and that's about it.
Well, I believe, and you see, and this is one of the things that we need to value in our countries, Canada, US, and all the countries that have that freedom. We do need to value the fact that we have different viewpoints, and that there is journalism representing the different viewpoints. To me, that's not so sad that there's this point of view. To me, what it is sad that the opposing, anything that's now opposing this point of view is losing ground, and it's being discredited, as is being said in a lot of articles,
Right.
So what we want to talk about today is we personally have been approached by a couple of journalists, reporters, about an issue that is really being debated in Canada. And there is no surprise here because the school year in Canada is about to start next week. So we're back to school here in Canada. I know in the US, a lot of schools and states have already started. But there is a lot of political play that is happening before the beginning of the school year. So we have spoken about the fact that in past shows about the fact that there is a march being planned here in Canada by parents, initiated by parents in the Muslim community, but a lot of people are seeing Christians join the movement, and really any parents that disagree with the fact that their children are taught gender ideology in schools, which they believe is not the place or not the right source for children to be taught anything about gender, sexuality, and so forth. But the reason this march is happening is because the parental right of being informed and giving consent to these things is being taken away. And this was kind of spread, this information was spread by leaked documents from certain school boards.
Yeah, it wasn't supposed to get out.
And so parents, teachers all over the country are now getting together and planning this massive walkout on September 20th. They call it the 1 million man march. Person march. Okay, let's just, because there will be all kind of persons.
It's people kind.
So there will be a 1 million people march just to demonstrate to our government that parents do not agree for the government to take over decisions for their children, to keep secrets from them. It is not even anti-LGBTQ march. It is parental march, parental right march. And so this is happening in the political scene. And now we're seeing, just as the school year is approaching, that there are 2 provinces in Canada. The first one was it New Brunswick?
It was New Brunswick.
New Brunswick in June passed legislation, and just this past week, it was Saskatchewan, a second province, passed legislation saying that any decisions that are going to be made concerning a children's pronouns, children's gender identity, anything of that sort, parents need to be informed. So they have to be informed. And now the media is playing on words and saying, but there isn't much. I don't know if it's also they need to give consent. I think it's both, being informed and giving consent. So there's 2 provinces that now have led the way of doing that. And of course, a lot of activists that are LGBTQ. And actually, I was just reading an article that acronym is changing to be more inclusive. But anyway, the alphabet activists are now voicing their opinions just before school. Their opinions about the fact that this is dangerous move on a part of those 2 provinces' governments. And so now journalists, reporters all over the country are trying to find out, what do parents actually feel that is the right thing to do? How many parents would like to be informed? And actually, polls have found out that close to 80% of parents have said, we would like to be informed.
And what on earth is wrong with the other 20%?
I don't know.
I mean, the question I have is, how on earth did we get here? How have we arrived to the point where parental consent about
is questionable? Whether it should be done is questionable.
And listen, we're not talking about whether, the children want to change clothes or something like that. We're talking about fundamental medical issues, irreversible medical issues. And they're saying that the parents have no right to be involved in this. And you've got people out there who actually concur with that.
And actually, as I was reading this article about our prime minister investing money into, I guess, helping the youth who are identified as LGBTQ. And again, I'm not covering all the letters because I can't. I'm going to just call everything the alphabet, or
Mafia,
the alphabet group. So
that's the name of Google's parent company.
Oh, well. So, not to be mistaken for that.
Well, who do you think's behind all this?
So, but as I was reading the article, now you made me lose my train of thought.
I do that well.
Where was I going with that? I was reading
Trudeau and his funding.
Right. So, what it was saying, and well, I might as well go and read the article because that would really help me remember. So, sorry. That, all right. It's just of the essence that children need to be protected of their parents who do not agree with them and so forth. And Oh gosh. Yeah. I was making a point, and I might as well read this now and go over some of the statements that were made. But what I'm trying to say in this whole thing is that we're discussing whether parents should be informed and whether they should consent for their children to make decisions. Oh, one of the things was that first journalist from the Toronto Star asked as well, why is this such a big deal? It's something like a child picking a nickname or something like that. And so to which we said it's not the same thing as picking a nickname, because in order for a child to choose a pronoun, a different pronoun and a different name to identify something new, you have to ask what got them to the point to want to do that.
Well, what we have to also discuss is that this journalist was being completely disingenuous because he's a Muslim, and he said he has a 5-year-old kid. I said, so would you like someone, an outside agency,
which is the school,
influencing your child to do something that opposed your values? And he says, well, I'm not really comfortable with answering that question. I'm the one who asked the questions, but I don't tend to give my opinion. You liar, you.
Right.
He was lying through his teeth, because there's no way that he would agree to something like that.
Whatever it is, the polls show that the parents would like to be informed. And so this journalist, again, this reporter asked me or asked us, why would parents want to be informed? Okay, so let's start. And actually, the fact that we are questioning whether parents should know about their children's major life decisions, identity decisions, the fact that we're even questioning this, it's really,
it's.
I don't even know what to call it, because
it's gaslighting.
Yeah.
What they're doing is they're trying to say to parents and make them feel guilty about this, that we should even question what society is trying to tell our kids. And this is classic leftist, communist, Marxist tactics.
Yes. So it is almost just, it's telling parents that, really the schools know best. And so when Justin Trudeau introduced this funding that the federal government of Canada is giving towards, has unveiled the details of a 5-year, $100 million plan to support LGBTQ two-spirit and intersex communities across the country. So now it's becoming 2SLGBTQI plus action plan. That's what it's called now. And so he wants to resurrect, obviously, all the pride parades in Ottawa that were obviously stopped because of COVID-19 the last couple of years. But that's a very small part of that. Mm-hmm. But that's part of where taxpayer money goes for those parades.
Right.
So this will guide our ongoing work to fight discrimination, break down barriers to advance rights, and to build a future where everyone in Canada is truly free to be who they are and love whom they love, Mr. Trudeau said on Sunday.
Right.
So because of that march being planned, and because of what the polls are saying, I don't think Mr. Trudeau is speaking on behalf of his country, of the people in his country. Yes, it is true that the LGBTQ is a minority group. And yes, they do need help, but I think what they need help with is counseling on embracing who they are, on trying to get down to the bottom line of why is it that they want to change anything about themselves. And the other thing is, what they're talking about is that part of the money, so most of the money goes into organizations in small community in communities, so small organizations that are in each community throughout Canada, but part of that money is going to go into schools. Now, just like in the States, in Canada, education is a provincial jurisdiction. So each state and each province decides on education. So it's interesting how the federal government, though, is trying to influence and intervene in decisions that are really should be up to the specific province. And now, because of this legislation has been passed, there are concerns. Now, most people say that it's a good idea that parents be informed, and I guess they're realizing they still do not have enough parents on their side to say, yeah, do whatever you want with my child.
Start them on hormone blockers, send them for gender reassignment surgery so that they come home something different.
Right, and that was the point that this a reporter journalist was making. It's like, well, this is just picking a name. It's like, I don't want to talk about all these procedures and things like that, but why would the child express that they're unhappy with their identity if they don't want to proceed any further beyond the change of their name or their pronoun? And the legislation. Okay, so that's another point I want to make. The legislation says that children 16 and under should have parental consent and inform the parents. That's 16 and under. Okay, so what's the legal age? That's another kind of point we were having. So,
well, I asked him, I said, well, you can't vote in this country until you're 18. You can't drive until you're 16. You can't marry.
You can't drink alcohol.
You can't drink until you're 19. But we're going to allow children to make decisions that are medical and irreversible.
Yeah, and they're medical in the physical sense, but they're also medical in the psychological sense.
Well, what happens is, and it's been documented, that children who gender transition end up becoming suicidal after. And how convenient. Canada has some of the most liberal euthanasia laws in the world. And so now children who transition want to die because they realize they're never going back to normal.
They're permanently changed
and damaged.
The way their body functions.
It's not just change. That if I start working out at the gym and I gain 20 pounds of muscle mass and I get in better shape, I've changed. These kids are damaged because they have body parts, essential body parts that are cut off. And you can't replace those things.
Well, the body balance, in anyone who studied biology, that when you take away something from the body or add something, the body balance is
they're not kilter.
Yes, it's not balanced anymore.
Yeah.
And so the body has to work very hard, and sometimes with detrimental results. Things just don't function well for the rest of your life. The body has amazing ability to heal, but not if you have taken some essential parts, to produce hormones that balance and so forth. I'm just, I guess, going to read the only part of what we said that ended up in the article.
Yeah.
So it's becoming now, whose rights are more important, children's rights or parental rights? Which should never be, because that's artificially dividing the family. Again,
right.
That is not the right thing to even be discussing.
Well, and the point that we made with this journalist was that parents are the primary caregivers and are responsible for the children. If something
so they should know what the child
if
is
something
doing.
happens to the child that's detrimental, who gets held accountable? It's the parents.
Yes. So if the child is not well, if the child is, is children's services going to go to the school and hold the school accountable
Right.
for, I guess, teaching and encouraging all these changes?
Yeah.
Or are the parents going to be held accountable for their child's well-being? And we know what the answer is.
Of course.
So then why are we even questions why parents need to know and have consent and make decision for their children? I don't understand. So in the article, it says that meanwhile, socially conservative parents agree that the government is usurping the rights of parents to raise their children in an environment that align with their religious beliefs and values. I will have to tell you that, first of all, parents who disagree with the SOGI, the sexuality or sexual orientation
and gender
identity program and teaching in schools are not all religious. We work with parents that come from different walks of lives and beliefs. So that is what, first of all, and I just want to point out how that so subtly kind of gets put in there. Yeah. It's only religious parents. No, we have non-religious parents who also think because of psychology and finding how the brain works, they understand that this is not age appropriate. Okay, so Milena and Darryl Weinberg are the founders of SchoolPods Canada, an education advocacy organization. They pulled their son out of Ontario public school system over disagreement with the sex ed curriculum introduced by the previous Liberal government in 2014. And he didn't put it in there, but he asked us, well, what did you disagree with? And we said, which didn't go into the article, is that the person who was assigned the job to put that...
The one who designed the curriculum.
Who designed the curriculum and put it together to be introduced in schools was...
He was a convicted pedophile. He went to jail after.
He was convicted. And so after that conviction happened, that curriculum was never pulled out of schools.
Because Kathleen Wynne, who was the premier at the time, had also left her husband and entered into a lesbian relationship and had been living that for a number of years. And she has been one of the most vocal advocates of all of this stuff.
Right. So, and somebody chooses a certain lifestyle, and that's okay. As an adult, they can do that.
No, it's not okay.
Well, it is not okay.
It's their choice.
In God's eyes, is not okay. But we are not here to intervene with them. They make their choices. God gives people free choice. But that was put into schools, and I don't understand why nobody here in Ontario ever said, could we please take the curriculum out of schools because a pedophile put it together?
There were people who were protesting, but the government, like they always do nowadays, just ignored everybody. There were people who were making noise about it.
Because I think anybody who thinks of the well-being of children will say, you know what, this has a really bad rap, like bad history. We need to probably scrap this and start all over again, which our current Conservative government in Ontario did not do.
Nope. And they promised.
They promised they would.
When Doug Ford was running for premier, he promised that he would scrap it. And as soon as he got in, nothing happened. So
they just updated it and made it more relevant to the times, but they just left the essential, again, pedophile written curriculum to stay there. So is it any wonder why parents are now questioning why is that in schools and why is that being taught to their children and to be concerned? So that's our little small disagreement with that curriculum. Oh, and the other part we disagreed with the fact that our son was still in public school at the time, and we just received a letter. Well, as of the spring of 2014, we're introducing the sex ed curriculum. There was no consultation of parents prior to that. There was no polls. There was nothing. It was just put in there, and here you go. You're getting this.
Yeah.
So the next thing it says in this article is Milena is a former public school board teacher of 7 years, argued school boards and government are overstepping and that children don't have the capacity to make decisions about sexuality or gender identity. So this is where I'm saying the legislation was about children 16 and under.
Mm-hmm.
Not only, so if the children should be able to decide about taking on different identity and sexual things, why are they not allowed to vote at that point?
Mm-hmm.
So 16 and under. The other thing I pointed out was that according to brain research, and that was now 20 years ago, that was found out, has found out that the frontal lobe of the brain, and I'm repeating that for many people who already know this, doesn't fully develop until the age of 25, give or take.
And that's assuming that there's no trauma. That's assuming that there's no drug use, which stunts people emotionally.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we're getting the same questions as the last time,
Mm-hmm.
And this is not the purpose of our show. So please take that, to another time in
Mm-hmm.
another place. So brain research has shown that up to the age 25, young people need their parents and the adults in their life who care for them to guide them, instruct them, and assist them in making good decisions, because the frontal lobe that's where social appropriateness is decided. Long-term thinking is also processed in the frontal lobe. So
Right.
when young children, especially under the age of 16, but I would argue up to the age of 25, are not physically and psychologically capable to make good decisions about the long-term effect of their decisions. That's
Mm-hmm.
what I said. I mean, children they have the capacity to think. Absolutely, they do. There's some very bright children and there's some very mature children out there. But you see, when they can't understand long-term effects, long-term consequences,
Mm-hmm.
then it is up to their parents to guide them and to make them think about those aspects of their
Mm-hmm.
decision making. So, so that is what is meant by children do not have the capacity to make a decision about sexuality. And my other question would be, why are adults who are not the parents of those children talking to children about sexual things?
Yeah.
What is the purpose of school again? It is to educate children about life skills and academic education.
Mm-hmm.
This whole identity and self-discovery that should be made in the safety of those children's home. Now, are there parents who disagree with some of the choices that children make? Absolutely, they do. And you know what? Those young children, once they become of mature age and live on their own, they will have the freedom to make these choices.
Well, and this is a whole lot different than if a child suddenly decides to come to faith in something. You got kids at a young age, they have a friend who may be a Christian, and then they get saved or something like that. The parents disagree with that. That's a whole different story, because that is a matter of belief. But when you're talking about the belief that you are conditioned to accept that causes you to self-harm, and gender reassignment surgery is self-harm. Nothing good comes out of that. Why we're even pushing this is complete mystery, other than the fact that pharmaceutical companies and the medical establishment makes tons of money off of these things.
Not to mention that aspect of it. So I think parents are wise to advise their children to wait to make such big decisions, and they have the full right to instill their own values in their children.
Absolutely.
And those children, once they learn what they could learn from their parents, then they could become the adults and make the choices that they want to make.
Right.
Because the other thing that's taught in school is consent, but how could children make consent if their brain is, again, doesn't have the ability to understand long-term effects and social appropriateness of some things. And
we see a lot of adults that don't know that.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of adults even talk to us nowadays. I wish I had learned that. I wish I knew how to make better choices.
We see,
we need adults, we need the parents to be there with the children to help them make those
because
choices.
the verse that we use again comes from the book of Proverbs. Train up a child in the way he should go. When he's older, he will not depart from it. We have a whole generation, a couple generations of children that are coming through whose parents have not trained them up in the way that they should go. You know, starting off with the baby boomers who just wanted to indulge their kids and indulge themselves. And, we had the consequences of that have been catastrophic. Yeah. We now have people in their 40s and 50s who still don't have the emotional maturity. I mean, we say quite often, 80 years ago, we sent our 19 and 20-year-olds off to war. And now we have 40-year-olds that are still living in their parents' basement playing video games.
Yeah. And that is, again, because I think we are ignoring brain research, and we are now trying to espouse ideologies that go against how biologically our body works, never mind how God designed it to work, and the wisdom of that.
Yes.
And so just to end off what was said about us is, so I was quoted that they, which is the children, are not sufficiently mature to understand the implication of changing their identity. Parents should become partners with the teachers and not the teachers. And it is not up to the teachers to take over the parenting of any kind and to be the ones to provide social guidance for the children. It's absolutely what happened to the multiculturalism and diversity in our society, where we respect the upbringing and the culture of the families where those children come from. You see, our government now is in a dilemma. Are we going to embrace our multiculturalism in our country, or are we going to ignore all that and promote this agenda? And you see, what the parents who would like to be informed and who would like to give consent, all they want is for them to make choice for their children. Those parents who would like their children to change their pronouns, to change their names, to have surgeries, to transition, to do whatever, under that legislation, they have the right to do that. That legislation doesn't take their rights away.
Yep.
So now we're talking about the fact that, well, that would take the rights away from children. Well, again, I believe that we need to consult psychologists, psychiatrists, child development specialists to really look into this issue. But we already know the maturity level at this point of children. And some of them might be doing it just because it's popular.
Yeah.
I mean, it's as simple as that. Children, we are all social creatures, and children want to belong. I mean, my son says today in the park, somebody said, well, something comment about his clothing. And he said to me, Mom, I want you to buy me something that's a little bit better. So I could buy my son clothing, but it's a different thing when we change his body completely because somebody mentioned something. And listen, children make comments like that. I also, my personal experience is that I was a tomboy when I was a girl, because I have an older brother, and I looked up to my older brother, and I wanted to hang out with his friends, and I liked to climb trees and just run around with the boys. And I didn't identify as a boy. I just did what boys did. And so I wanted to wear pants. I did not want to wear skirts and dresses.
Much to your mother's chagrin.
And my mother was actually a little concerned about that. She hid my pants and made me wear skirts for a week. Again, that didn't scar me emotionally. That didn't do anything. That just showed me that what my mother's beliefs are, and I wore the skirt, and it was fine. And then I was when she saw that I didn't mind it that much, I went back to wearing my pants. But nowadays, if a child wants to dress more like boyish, tomboyish, and so forth, and all these ideologies are presented to them, they will start questioning, well, maybe I'm supposed to be a boy then because I like boy things.
Well, and we had that happen with one of our pods where we had someone who was advocating for for homosexuality and trying to convince other kids in the pod that they were that too. And we had an 11-year-old girl who just, stood up one day and said, well, I think I'm gay too.
Yeah.
And when her mother found out, her mother said, you don't even know what that really means.
Yes. And so children, if they do not have interest in sexual things, until they reach puberty, then try to explain to them sexual things is not age appropriate. Never mind allowing the children to make decisions at that age. And now our prime minister is investing money to really encourage groups who are encouraging this behavior in children. So this is not research based. I mean, I think science, logic, reasoning is being thrown out here. It's not my rights versus your rights.
Right.
This legislation that the LGBTQ movement is against.
That's not what it is today.
I know. I alphabet movement is against is given the rights of parents to give consent. You can give consent if you want to, but those who don't want to don't have to. Why are we forcing? I think this legislation is actually all inclusive for all the parents. Children's rights. Children have rights. They have rights to decide food, clothing, things like that. Things that are daily decisions, but something that is life altering, identity altering. They need to be taught what all that means. They need to reach the maturity to be able to understand what that means.
Yeah.
So
for sure.
That's us. Oh, and then Darryl, you're quoted that you said school should stick to teaching about basics such as arithmetic and language. What is it? The 3 R's?
Reading, writing, arithmetic.
Reading, writing, arithmetic.
And then the final quote, and I love to say this, let's teach kids what a pronoun is as opposed to teaching which ones they should choose. Children don't even understand what pronouns are, and then we're going to have them choose one. And then once they've made a choice because they've been influenced, then the school system grabs onto that. The parents are cut off. We're going to start them on hormone blockers. Like, this is so insidious. So
we're investing into this, all these organizations that are going to essentially influence children outside of their parents' knowledge, understanding, and consent. What I express, and it's not quoted here, but my bigger concern is that it wasn't that long ago that in Ontario, we found out that students are graduating from high school with literacy that is not enabling them to get higher paid jobs and to even fill out an application for a job properly. So I think if we are going to sit and start thinking of what is good for children, is we need to think about what is going to set them for success in the future and allow them to make decisions later on as adults about things that are adult issues.
Sexuality has no place in the schools. We shouldn't be teaching about it. We shouldn't be talking about it. That is the responsibility of the parents. There are many, many good resources out there to properly introduce your children into this topic, and to have how far do you want to go with this? What is really behind this all? It's a grooming agenda, and they're giving them hormone blockers to maintain their youth longer. I mean, why is child sex trafficking all of a sudden becoming such a big deal? Why is The Sound of Freedom become such a popular movie despite
it's a big issue?
Because despite Disney's attempts to quash it and all these different organizations that are trying to make it hush hush. Child sex trafficking has been going on for a long time. Pedophilia has been going on for a long time.
Yeah.
This goes back, well, I mean, it goes back to the Greek and the Roman Empire. But, as North America was founded on Judeo-Christian principles, those things were taboo. Well, we have lost our moral compass now. We have now embraced, and what is Isaiah chapter 5 verse 20 says, woe to those who call good evil and evil good. The time is coming, has been in the past, and is now upon us again, where people call what is good evil. Praying outside of an abortion clinic, it's called and having conservative values is now being called the domestic terrorist. Believing in the monogamous relationship, a monogamous heterosexual relationship, and believing that marriage is an eternal thing, not just something to be tossed out the window like a Kardashian or something like that. And you're now being called someone who's evil. You're now being called the domestic terrorist for these beliefs. And the fact that you can mutilate your children is now becoming acceptable. And we're questioning as to whether, parents should even have a voice in this. Are you kidding me? Let someone try to convince my son about some of these things. That is going to be a very short conversation.
Yeah. Again, this is, and this journalist again asked, well, this is a very delicate issue. Yes, it is, because the children are very important to their parents. And that's why the parents are not neutral. And, now that parental consent has been established in those two provinces, now the other side, and why would... there's an organization called Mama Bears.
Yeah.
And their slogan is, it's okay to wait.
Mm-hmm.
Why are we rushing our children to grow up? Why are we rushing our children to become sexually active?
Yeah.
To sexually aware? Why are we even doing this? Meanwhile, COVID has really brought in a lot of psychological issues.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the rise of all that is happening is because children, they don't have hope.
Yeah.
A lot of young people are seeing how the world is a very hostile place.
Yeah.
And they're struggling and suffering. Why don't we put that $100 million to counseling and helping children
100%
to become healthy, to become confident and happy with who they are, embrace that,
mm-hmm.
and see what gift they have, and help them. Alrighty. We
Thanks.
Just had something happen in here. So I think we need to really define what well-being of the child means. And is it linked to their sexual identity? Is that what is really the determining factor of success of a child in the future?
The vast majority, and someone who's been in pastoral ministry for 20 years now, the vast majority of people that have come to me and have emotional issues, and it was especially prevalent in our old congregation when we lived up in Peterborough. The vast majority of people suffered because of sexual abuse when they were kids.
Yeah, let's address that.
They were molested, they were raped, they were abused, some of them serially, and they were never able to recover from that. Sexualizing children goes against their very nature. And what I said to this journalist from the Toronto Star, children should be able to maintain their innocence as long as possible. They don't need to be introduced, because you know what? The sexual world is a very confusing world, even at the best of times.
Even for adults.
Well, because you have got hormones that are going and convincing you to do what ultimately is wrong for you. The committing adultery, for instance, or, when we have relationships that break down because of this or that or the other thing. Even when you have a healthy environment, you're still fighting against certain instincts. But when you go and you destroy a child's innocence like that, when you introduce them to and it's not about attraction. The vast majority of pedophilia has nothing to do with sexual attraction. It has to do with power and control.
Well, and our prime minister being quoted that we should be a country where everyone should be able to love whoever they love. What's the definition of love?
Yeah.
And let's distinguish between lust and love, because love is a self-sacrificing. It's not a sexual thing necessarily.
But let's go back to the Greek. The Greek language has 4 different words for love, and one is storge, which is familial love. You have phileo, where we get Philadelphia from, brotherly love, familial
friendship,
love, the love that one has for family members. You have eros, which is where we get eroticism from. That is lust and that is sex. But then you also have agape. And agape, which, by the way, the Greek philosophers kind of disdained and looked down upon, is unconditional sacrificial love.
Yeah.
And agape love is love that is based on not an emotion, but on a decision.
And not expecting anything in return.
We decide to love someone irrespective, regardless of whether they deserve it, which nobody really does, but also because, even if we don't feel like it.
So
what kind of love are we talking about here?
God loves even the LGBTQ alphabet people because they were created by him, whether they recognize that or acknowledge that.
Yes.
And so do Christians, because we are told to love the people.
Yeah.
But we don't have to love or approve of the things that go against decency and really God's standards.
Listen, husband and wives, they love each other. They don't always agree with one another, and they don't always have to like the decisions that they make. I love my son dearly. He is the most precious thing in the world to me, practically. And yet there are many things that he does that I don't like, I don't approve of, that he gets disciplined for. One has nothing to do with the other. And one of the problems that we have is that love has been defined by Hollywood.
Yeah.
And, the soap operas and, getting involved in, in a lifestyle that is completely counter to what our nature is. And so we have to take the narrative back is what we have to do.
Yes. Well, I think that giving parents the ability to make decisions is not taking anyone's rights away. The children do have rights. They have rights to a loving home. And another thing is that I was thinking about, another biblical wisdom is that children should honor their parents, is what it says. It's honor.
Mm-hmm.
And so we need to really understand what honor is. And those who know the Bible know that is the only commandment that comes with the promise right after it, which is so that
you may live a long life.
So you're promised a long life and a good life, prosperous life, if you are honoring of your parents. Because guess what? If you have children, what would you expect them to do?
Yeah.
And so we need to think more than just current ideology, I believe. I think we all need to develop our frontal lobes and think about long-term effects of what we are deciding today.
And just to show you how insane the political system has become, there's an article today that says California sues school district that require teachers to notify parents if their child changes their gender identity or pronouns. So California's Attorney General is suing a school district regarding a new policy that requires the teachers to notify parents. And he said that alleging its parental notification policy is discriminatory and violates both civil rights and privacy laws, according to a press release. He alleged that the policy puts transgender and gender nonconforming students in danger of imminent, irreparable harm by risking they'll be outed in their household before they are ready.
And you know what? This is an American article, and I'm seeing that same line in all kinds of Canadian articles.
Yep.
How many parents have kicked out their children out of their home? I mean, really, if we're going to take polls, let's take polls. Let's find out what is realistically happening. Yes, there may be tension, but there's also tension about the fact that, children may make a poor choice in friendships and doing drugs. And, so if the parents cannot have a say in one aspect, then they can't have a say in anything. Again, who is going to guide these young people of how to make good choices and steer them away from poor choices? Who's going to give them a long-term effect consequence information? And you know what? A lot of these parents maybe have done a lot of these things themselves and learned the hard way. And so, going through these gender changes, that's self-destructive behavior. And I know that not long ago, also gender dysphoria was, it used to be mental illness, classified as mental illness. Now it is not. So, and this is why when I say, well, we should really, look into psychology, the thing is, because of ideology, we're trying to change even scientific findings. And we need to stop that. We need to just really, really see what anybody who's a parent knows what they want for their children. And I hope they want the best for their children. I hope they want them to be happy, but they want them to be prosperous. And so happiness. So is love allowing someone to do what they want, or is love helping them make better choices?
So here's the article that you have here.
Okay.
Like, just insanity.
Now in Canada, the schools now are being guided by the government what policies they should have. And you see, different communities are different.
Right.
And, parents in different communities may want different things. We have to decide, again, what is age appropriate for the children, what is going to encourage the family to stay united, to the children to grow in a healthy environment. And again, having the schools and politics get into the households. And listen, like we mentioned earlier, there's child services. And there's very clear criteria what's safe and what's unsafe for children.
Sure.
And if we are trying to change that according to your ideology because your government is putting money into that, then who are we doing this for, really? Is it for the children?
Yeah, it is so hard to, if we were to take a step back and we were to analyze this from a logical point of view as to what we know is right or wrong, anybody can see clearly. It's like I said, going back to your original statement there, that 80% of people think that parents should be informed. What on earth is wrong with the other 20% who don't see anything wrong with their children being told to do something without their consent?
And
what kind of parent are you?
And I don't believe there's just gentle teaching and guidance that's happening in schools. We have actually heard recordings from classrooms, and now a lot of schools are starting to ban cell phones in classrooms. But we're starting to hear teachers downright shame, yes, children because their family has chosen not to participate in Pride Month. Why is that being celebrated in schools anyway? That, are all schools celebrating Cinco de Mayo? Not here in Canada. Or are we all celebrating a Chinese New Year? Are we all, you know what I mean? Like, if we're going to talk about cultural diversity, why is there only, and this is what Canadians are finding, that having LGBTQ flags in schools is really now undermining the diversity of Canada. What's wrong with a Canadian flag just being out there? That includes everyone in the country.
We all know what this is really all about. And so School Pods Canada, and as soon as we're ready, School Pods International will get into the United States. If you want to start a pod, you need to let us know. Reach out to us. Give us a call. We need 5 to 10 students and a safe home to be able to put the children in. We'll bring in a certified teacher, and your children will get the education that they deserve, the education that will prepare them to be successful in life. We've got to take this. That will
embrace their learning style and who they are and how they learn, instead of making them change the way they are. And we also have the parents and the teacher work in partnership with one another, and both sides look out for the well-being of the children.
Nothing should be hidden.
Yes.
So anyway. Well, we've come to the end of another broadcast, and how quickly it went. Look at that. Huh? Whole hour we talked on this craziness. It's very, very upsetting. It's frustrating. However, God is still on the throne.
Yes.
And he will have victory over this evil. We got to run. Thanks so much for joining us this week, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week, where we will be interviewing actually a lady who has started a private school to deal with such things. So you don't want to miss that. Have a great week, everybody. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye for now.
We are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussion, and prayer programming you can find anywhere on this planet. Be sure to take the tour of the MessianicLambRadio.com website. I'm Susan Hoogie, thanking you for joining us on the Messianic Lamb Video Network.